Hello everyone, thanks for joining today, and I present to you Sorcerous Sundries. This is my new favorite thing that I have ever made. After a catastrophic start, which you'll see, everything else in the project just went great. I even had a few magical breakthrough moments. Building this thing from scratch was just a joy, and that's not always the case. Sometimes when I'm slinging cardboard, and only cardboard, it gets pretty old. But doing mixed media with found items just gets my gears turning. It's a gratification that I can't describe. So come on, let me walk you through this experience. So I'm renovating the kitchen right now, actually the whole house, and all over the house are these builder's grade cheap dome lights on the ceiling. My wife hates them. She has a particular nickname for them. I don't like them either, and I took down 3 of them the other day. They have a lot of good parts and big geometries and stuff I normally don't come across, so of course I saved them. And sure enough, while perusing Baldur's Gate East, I came across Sorcerous Sundries. This is the perfect thing to use the light on. I figured the dome part was going to be the trickiest, so I started with that. After a coat of primer, it's to the airbrush for this peachy color. I couldn't find a spray in the store that was close enough to this, and I wasn't really willing to compromise on the color palette. I really want it to match the source image, so airbrush it was. With that base coat done, switching to an orangey red and doing chaotic swirling. At this point, I thought I would get clever and apply a spray clear coat to create sort of a save point and harden it for the upcoming masking tape. Bit of foreshadowing there. And here's some painter's tape. The brand is Frog Tape. I use this on the house all the time. I figure it's designed to be low tack and is designed to mask off and not pull paint with it, right? So I did a few tests with it and eventually masked off random polygons all over the dome. I quickly realized it was easier to cut small triangles and trapezoids and overlay them in random ways than it is to try and cut a large random shape on its own. So that done, electric blue into the airbrush and a solid base coat all over. Then switching to ultramarine and doing sporadic swirling just like before. Along came the moment of truth. The first bit of tape came off pretty nicely. The second bit of tape came off pretty nicely. The third bit of tape ripped off all the paint down through the primer to the glass. I was not a happy camper, but maybe it's a one-off. Maybe I nicked it with the tip of the knife and just need to be a little more careful, go slower. So I kept going, and in fact the neck shape came off beautifully. It was fine. Hope restored. And then the next few tore the paint straight off. This was not going to get better. It was not salvageable at this point, and I went Office Space on the dome. Luckily, as I said, I took 3 of these down the other day, so dome number 2. Gonna do some things differently. After a clean, I hit it with sandpaper to scuff it up. Also, this is several millimeter thick glass, but it's clouded. The outside is rough to the touch, so it's not a smooth finish, I think. But just in case, I took some acetone and slathered it all over as an extra clean, and to etch it, maybe? I have no idea if this did anything or not. Then another change, I used Rust-Oleum 2X Flat Gray Primer, God's gift to humanity. Should have done this in the first place, instead of using an airbrush model grade primer. I also gave this overnight to fully cure. Then back to the airbrush for that peach base coat, orangey red swirling, and as I was doing that, a cobweb cleared, a memory came back. When Graphics reached out about a year ago to sponsor one of my videos, yes, Graphics of Graphics Medium Chipboard, they sent me a bunch of products, including this Frisket film. Didn't think much of it at the time, threw it in the drawer, haven't used it since, but then I remembered I had it. It talks about being for airbrushing and stenciling, so maybe this is more appropriate and lower tack than that painter's tape. So I went about doing all my shape masking with this. Now again, it is a lot easier to create large shapes out of small triangles and trapezoids, so I pre-peeled the entire sheet and just kept it upside down as I cut away strips and then lopped those strips into my small shapes, because I don't want to be peeling away 100 little shapes like stickers, especially because I just really don't have any fingernails. But anyway, now we're caught up, so solid coat of electric blue, ultramarine swirling, and the first shape came away very nicely. Hope reintroduced. The second shape came away very nice, so did the third, and in fact, all of them did. This approach was successful. So after I got off all the Frisket film, I took a black Sharpie and started tracing the orange shapes, then breaking them down into sub-shapes, as well as the blue areas, to make it look like the source image. Of Of all the changes I made for this second run, you might have noticed I did not use that spray clear coat before applying the Frisket film. So yes, I used a better primer, and yes, I used the Frisket film instead of painter's tape, but I think the main thing that made the difference was not doing that clear coat. I think I sprayed it too heavy on the first one, and the accelerant chemical in the clear coat sort of melted all that acrylic paint a little bit, and that's what made it soft, and that's what made it prone to tearing. But anyway, I got there, and now I have the equivalent of a 90s Trapper Keeper in dome form. I just kept going around finding big shapes and breaking them down into smaller ones until I was happy with how it looked. It took a good half hour to get this all done. I can't imagine how long it would have been using actual black paint. Heck with that. Alright, now the building structure. I've got my homemade circle cutting jig for the Proxen hot wire table here. I'll throw a card on the screen to the video where I made this jig in case you're interested. But I cut out the body of the building, and I did it as a ring, not just a cylinder, because at this point I wasn't sure yet if I wanted to have a playable interior or not. Normally I don't believe in playable interiors. I think they're kind of redundant and unnecessary, but I know people love them, and I want this video to go large. And here's another piece from the light fixture. This is the plate that actually connects to the ceiling. It's got a whole bunch of stuff on it, so I just tore it all off and disassembled it down to be just the plate. This is primed with Rust-Oleum 2X Flat Gray Primer, God's gift to humanity. I also cut out a cardboard circle somewhat bigger than the foam ring in order to leave room for the pillars on the outside later on, then glued the foam ring to it. Alright, now for that outer brick wall facade. This is Graphics Medium Chipboard. It's the very thick cardstock you find at the back of like a legal pad, but you can buy it in bulk like I do if you want. There's links in the video description below. And I decided to try out a long-standing hobby hack most recently brought back to the forefront by Jeremy of Black Magic Craft. See, I invested in some green stuff rollers several years ago and have never really gotten much use out of them. They don't work well on foam, and I hate using clay. So the hack here is painter's caulk, the latex kind. Simply apply it and then spread it out, and with 1 or 2 drops of dish soap in a cup of water, you can wet your fingers and smooth it out, and it does not stick. Same for the roller. Dunk it in that soapy water, then roll, and it comes out beautifully. Now I'm not using rubber as my substrate here, I'm using a paperish product, but still, you'll see there was no warping issue, not with caulk. I prepared several of these 3-inch wide strips and gave them overnight to dry. Now let's look at the source image again. These bricks are like a honeyish goldenrod sort of brown, and a few random bricks stick out as being gray or tan or black, but just a few. So, base coat of burnt umber, just 1 coat, don't care if the coverage is incomplete. Then here's the 5 paints I'm about to work through in the next few clips. With the honey brown, I did a strong overbrush. It looks terrible at this point, knew it would, that's fine. I let it dry, then I did a second pass of overbrushing. Then with that gray, tan, terracotta, and concrete color, I went through and picked out a few bricks, maybe 1 every 2 square inches or so. And then my other latest obsession, oil paint washes. Cheap brown oil-based paint from the crafting store, thinned in oil paint thinner. The only hard part about this is knowing how much paint to put in there, so I had a test piece nearby to make sure that I would get the right amount of pigment. And boy, did I. Look at that. Oh my god, I love this feeling. The instant definition, the explosion of color. Oil washes have just been a life changer for my crafting life. And everything is more vivid because it's still wet, but I already can tell that when it dries, it's going to be a perfect match for that source image. And in fact, take a look here and it is. I'm not even going to dry brush this or do any touch up. It's perfectly fine as is. Moving right along to the next step, which is to hot glue these onto the ring. I endeavored to make sure that strips met each other where a black column is going to be on the outside so it covers up the seam. But oh, let's just take a moment and rewind. Look at these again. Excluding dry time waiting, this is 5 minutes of effort. I cannot believe it. What else we got in the source image? There's this vestibule sticking out the front. This is pretty easy to assemble. The only hard part is coping it around the curvature of the building. So I turned the building upside down and traced it onto some cardboard and then cut that out. And I won't belabor this. Suffice it to say I used double corrugated as a structure inside and hot glued on the right size slabs of brick stuff to make that vestibule. Also, there's this fixture up at the top on the dome, so I had to cope the dome curvature. A little trickier. I traced that onto some thin cardstock and then used that as a master to trace onto the back of the prepared brick strips and cut those out manually. Here's the 4 of them attached together and doing a quick dry fit to test for accuracy and a side profile, and oh yeah, that guy is good. Also, there's this dark brown slanted section and then a smaller plinth of brick on top. Topping it all off, this is a miniature ping pong ball. Don't know why they make them smaller than normal ping pong balls, but I cut this one in half, primed it, and airbrushed it with a very muted gold. Voila. Here's a dryer sheet. Now ideally you would use the cheaper ones that don't look like manufactured like this one does. They look more like spider webs, but the idea is you tug at it a little bit and without fully tearing it you get some spider webbing, and you can create a template for marbling with your airbrush. Now as it turns out, this was much ado about nothing. With the result I get, I probably could have just used a kitchen sponge and a few random spritzes with the airbrush, but I don't know, I figured I'd try it. Anyway, here's a quick test fit, just checking to see how everything's looking, and I'm noticing that the light gray that I used in the marbling is a little bit too light, so I'll just wash that down. It's like 10 parts water to 1 part black paint, and I think there's some black ink mixed in there too, I don't remember. But wow, look at that, the black is tinting the light gray, we're getting extra shades introduced. That is really looking beautiful. I lucked out on this. God, I love when this happens. Now, regardless of the first floor, I do know that the second floor can be a playable interior. I ought to capitalize on that. I don't need to permanently affix the dome. It should be removable. So I cut a 9-inch base of graphics medium chipboard, and just for now, I'm going to do a wood floor. A whole bunch of popsicle sticks, and more of that wash from earlier. But I did add a little to it. I wanted this to be a little more vibrant, so I took some orange oil paint and a little more brown oil paint and mixed them in the existing cup. Not adding any thinner, so this will be a little more pigment rich and hopefully a little more orangey. And upon applying it, in fact, it is. Oh man, look at that. What a gorgeous finish. I'll never stop touting the advantages of using real wood for your wood floors. It is so easy, and it's so easy to make it look good. So I'll probably eventually put something on the other side of this, maybe a stone floor, but for now, for this video and showing it off, this will be good enough. And lastly, look at this sign out front. It literally looks like 3 popsicle sticks with a sign wrapped around it. So that's what I got, some popsicle sticks, and I cut them down to size. To space them out, I attached them to some upside down masking tape, doused all their edges with super glue, and then spritzed with super glue accelerant. And now it's one piece. Near as makes no difference. The color already matches, no need to even paint it. Then I did a little bit of Photoshop magic to figure out exactly what this symbol is. It's either a wolf howling at a moon or it's a lick of flame. I think it's the latter. And then there's some blobs around it. I think that they're stars. So I used a little bit of Google image searching and got some clip arts and put together a banner in Photoshop. Here it is printed. I simply cut it out, painted the back, and wrapped it around that wooden thing. Also, here's some circular wooden dowels. I cut these to length and gave them the black marbling treatment, same as everything else. Now I've been traipsing you all over Baldur's Gate, but I believe this is our first visit to East Baldur's Gate. Now in the game, Sorcerous Sundries is a colorful circular building located in that district. Its primary function is the selling and buying of magical weapons and armor, projectiles, ammunition, spell scrolls, wands, and potions. This building has a variety of quests throughout chapters 5 and 7, but I can think of several uses to use for it in my homebrew sessions. It would make a decent conservatory for a multi-building magical university. It could be a wizard's lair. Obviously, it could be a shop, which it is in the game, and any number of other mystical things. It's abstract enough looking that I think if I just put it on the right battle mat surrounded by the right few pieces of scatter, context will do the rest of the work for me. And that's true of any of these Baldur's Gate buildings I've built. I've never actually run a campaign in Baldur's Gate, and I don't really plan to. Oh, and to explain my comment earlier about playable interiors, my view is if I'm going to remove most of this building to reveal a floor inside, I might as well just remove the whole building and put down a floor that matches its footprint. It's mechanically the exact same thing, and it's a lot less finicky to deal with. Of course, that's only true for first floors. Anything above that, I do get it having removable levels, and that's why here I was happy to make that dome removable and not permanently attach it. So people are really enjoying this sub-series, And I'm thinking I'm going to do a community competition pretty soon. Something like select a feature from Baldur's Gate and build it. Then there'd be judging either by the community or a panel, I don't know yet. And the prize would be something big, like a 3D printer. I'm still noodling on this though, so if you're interested, subscribe and hit the reminder bell. Join the Wylock Nation. I really hope that the camera has adequately captured this, because it is my new favorite thing that I have ever made in my, 9 years on YouTube. This is it. So thank you for watching today. Don't forget to find us on Facebook, the Tabletop Crafters Guild. Also, I got Patreon and Amazon and all that stuff. The links are in the description below. Till next time, I'm Wylock. Make things, play games.